Ryan, if you would. I'd like to call this meeting of the Independent School District 181 Brainerd Public Schools Board of Education to order. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, or excuse me, let's do a roll call first.
Kevin Boyle.
Here.
Michelle Brecken.
Here.
DJ Dunlear.
Here.
Randy Heidemann.
Here.
Sarah Spear.
Here.
John Ward.
Here.
All present.
And now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first up on the agenda is the approval of the agenda as amended. We have a couple of changes tonight, nothing super material. The first one is we added a recognition for the Harrison Elementary, which we'll get to in a moment. On the consent calendar, there is the a cappella choir clinic added. And then Marcy, when she does the approval of the resolution for the general obligation school building facilities maintenance bond, there's a sale day report that was added to our packet for that. And I believe that's everything. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Spear, seconded by Director Heidemann. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sign.
You have to do a roll call.
Oh, we have to do all roll call votes
That's
because
John.
Director Ward is remote. That's correct. Sorry.
Michelle Brecken.
Yes.
DJ Dunlear.
Yes.
Randy Heidemann.
Yes.
Sarah Spear.
Yes.
John Ward.
Yes.
And Kevin Boyle.
Yes.
All approved.
Excellent. So by my count, if it won't offend Director Ward, we have 5 recognitions. I can maybe start with Director Heidemann at the end down here, and we'll read them off one by one.
Okay, congratulations to the Warrior Varsity Dance Team. They captured the Section 3A championship in high kick and took 3rd place high kick. They are headed to the Minnesota State High School League State Tournament being held at Target Center on February 17 and 18 of 2023.
And congratulations to Maddie Avery, Cassidy Raridan, Bailey Clausen, and Semi Heltner on being selected to the Class 3A All-State Dance Team. Avery and Raridan are named to the All-State Kick Team, and Clausen and Hiltner were named to the All-State Jazz Team. And they'll be performing March 11th at Edina High School.
Congratulations to both the boys and girls Nordic ski teams for being Central Lakes Conference champions. Wow, that's cool.
Yeehaw. Congratulations to the girls Nordic ski team for being the 8A section champions and the boys Nordic ski team for finishing in 2nd place. Both teams are advancing to the state tournament being held February 15th and 16th at Giants Ridge Golf and Ski Resort in Bowawick.
Congratulations to Harrison Elementary 4th grade student Amira Cosgrove. Amira's art was selected for the K-12 My District, My Minnesota program. The Minnesota Senate invited students to submit photos or drawings of life in their district. Each senator then chose the one they felt was the best representation of their district. Amira's submission was selected to represent District 6 and will be displayed in the Minnesota Senate building for the rest of 2023.
And Kevin, I have one to add. So we have congratulations to the girls gymnastic team. They took 2nd place at the conference meet this past Saturday, and they're off to sections.
Excellent. Lots to be proud of yet again. All right, now we did get an additional card, so we're going to move on to public input. Let's start with Mike Stanek, please. And a member of the public can address the board during this time. Comments can or will be limited to 3 minutes. Complaints or allegations against students or employees may not be discussed due to data privacy. Complaints or allegations must be submitted in writing to the superintendent. And the Board of Education and the superintendent will not converse with the guests to address the topics discussed at this time.
Evening, Mike Stanek. Just wanted to come in tonight and just say, as a community member, parent in this community, and the great things that are going on. I was able to attend the Brainerd Public Schools Foundation dinner, which was a lot of fun. I understand, we raise a lot of money at these events. a shout out to all the PTOs out there doing their thing with all the goal runs and whatnot. And I want to specifically talk about Garfield. They did an outstanding job, raised almost $23,000, which is over double what they've ever done before. And hopefully, working towards a double zip line, which brings me to my next thing here is like, we have a bunch of elementary schools, 6 across the district, that may or not be equitable with the playground equipment. Since we like to use the word equitable a lot in the district, I think we need to look at not only in the classroom, but also with the mental health aspect and what good play does for kids and their mental health. We have a student at Garfield who is in a wheelchair, and there's no wheelchair accessible playground equipment for that student. So again, our PTO is hoping to move forward and request funds from organizations in the community. But after talking with Reed and whatnot, we just want to make sure that you're aware of conversations that are going to be had in the future with that equipment and what we're hoping to do. The big thing too is, getting those PTOs together and discussing what's working across the district, not siloing as we sometimes do, right? Share those good ideas and what we can do across the board to make sure that one school isn't going way out there and spending a lot of money that another school may or may not be able to afford. So then there's students missing out on opportunities there as well. So just moving forward, I'm sure there'll be another committee put together, because that's what we tend to do here, is have a lot of committees. But just wanted to open that dialogue and make sure that you're aware that that conversation will be had in the near future here, of making sure that, you're aware of what we want to do, and hopefully if it goes to a vote, if you approve it, because it's on school grounds, that we can have that dialogue. So, thank you.
Thank you. And next up, we have Sean Spade. I think I'm saying it right. Yes. Welcome.
Hey. So I've never done this before, but I am Sean Spade. I'm the parent of said child. Her name is Everly Joanne Spade. She was born with CP, born 3 months premature, and is wheelchair bound for the rest of her life. So, she always talks about how she always is on the asphalt playing and watches the other kids play. And once in a while, she'll get friends to come with her and play the spy, and they'll go spy on the teachers by just hanging around the corner and watching them. And that's, to me, doesn't sit right. Listening to my daughter saying that she has to watch people. And there's other places that have handicap accessible equipment, and I feel that she's being left out in all play aspects of that. Granted, you guys have done a great thing with Garfield on making things accessible. It is amazing what's been going on lately. I love it. It would be nice to see it go forward. I do feel that a lot of these schools around here are not compliant with ADA laws. And I would like to start changing that. And I will be here once a month to talk about it if we need to. But if you guys get funding from the state level, things need to be compliant, whether it be a ramp onto the playground, so she doesn't have to figure out how you're gonna lift up a wheelchair 6 inches off the ground at 120 pounds. Or wonder how you're gonna get 2 people to lift her up into a bucket seat. She's gonna be too heavy at that point when she's in middle school. I'm going to the city level too, because there's nothing besides bucket seats. It'd be nice to be able to get something more inclusive for kids who are, getting to be grown and can't be lifted from wheelchair to bucket seat or stroller to bucket seat, whatever it may be. But there should be ways that she can be more included in what she has at that school. And I don't feel like it would be much to get the ball rolling on it. I'll do the fundraising. I'll do whatever. I don't care. It's not hard to do it, to be honest. Especially when it comes to that little girl, just put her face on something, it'll happen. So if we can get something going, it'd be nice. That's all I gotta say. Pretty sure I'm over my time, but, so, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll proceed with the approval of the minutes from the January 30th regular school board meeting.
Heidi, what are the rules for the ADA on the playgrounds and all that stuff?
That'd be a great
Is
question.
it complicated? I mean, we don't need to go over it right now, but I am curious, because Mike talked about it, and now, it's like,
We have varying levels of different facilities, so I think the parent makes a very good, Sean makes a great point. That
so
there's,
some schools have it and some don't?
based on, there's been different fundraising and things like that. Part of it, we still have playground from construction too, so some of these are construction pieces of things that have been removed, and so.
Nasty. There is some websites that break it down and make it very simple. Pacer, ADA, there's, sorry, I've been doing a lot of research today. I guess I don't have that other one.
We could track you down later, Sean.
Yeah. Disability Hub Minnesota would also have good information, but they're fall and they get back to you because they're always dealing with a lot of legal stuff.
Cool.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, John?
perhaps we could have a special presentation at a board meeting that that we've been talking about as directors on ADA within the whole district.
I think that's an excellent idea, Director Ward.
As we just, we had, throughout our building project, which was the gift of the building project, we had multiple buildings that were not ADA compliant. So I think as you've talked about, there's been lots of transformations thanks to being able to have a bond referendum passed to update our facilities. And so that's a continued process. I think specific to Garfield, just so I know, I think you wrote a best practice grant for a piece of playground equipment as well.
We're in the process of working through Essentia, or PTO is working with Essentia right now to try to secure some funding. We've tried a variety of things, we just don't quite have enough to buy a chunk of equipment yet, or to do the installation costs, which I know can also be heavy. To get things anchored in correctly and make sure we have the right. The wood chips are an obstacle right now, that is a challenge for us to overcome.
It's definitely a growth area.
All right, sounds like we have some takeaways from it. Right?
Yeah.
Good. Anything else? All right, we'll move on then to the approval of the meeting minutes from January 30th.
So moved.
Of-
I'll second.
Second,
We have a motion from Director Heidman with a second by Director Brecken. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
And then roll call.
Opposed, same sign.
Roll call.
Oh, dang it, I keep forgetting already.
We're going with
3
approved.
meetings as the chair, and I can't even get that right.
DJ Dunlea,
Approved.
Andy Heidemann,
Yes.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
John Ward,
yes,
Kevin Boyle,
Yes.
Michelle Brecken,
Approved.
all in favor.
Then we'll move on to the consent calendar, approval of.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Donnellinger and a second by Director Spear. Any discussion? Hearing none, could we go to a roll call vote, please?
Randy Heidemann,
Yes.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
John Ward,
yes,
Kevin Boyle,
Yes.
Michelle Brecken,
Yes.
DJ Dunlea,
Yes.
all in favor.
All right, moving along to presentations. It's time for our Blueprint 181 update. Looks like Damien is in the house.
Yeah.
And Director TC is on standby.
Also tonight, we don't have any board business, which is great. It's been a little while since we've been here. Obviously, we have some familiar faces and some new faces with the board, but my name is Damian Williams. I'm project director with ICS. We are, believe it or not, winding down this project. We're down to our last project, so we brought, I have some pictures and give an update on the Wesby project, but it's been going very well. So we've been working hard at Wesby. So we have some pictures up on our presentation here, and what we're looking at here is the new Welcome Center. And you can see we are framed. We are currently roughing in that area. We're probably about 40% complete right now. We're getting ready to drywall. Drywall is scheduled for the 20th of this month to begin. So good progress. I believe our completion date is July 1st for this project, but I think there's a lot of motivation to be done sooner. A lot of contractors would like to be done and be on to their summer projects that are coming up. So we have a lot of involvement. Things are starting to really gear up there. So we're gonna wrapping up the mechanical and electrical rough ends and moving into finishes. So the next slide here shows some of the rough ends that are getting put in, that are being installed. So you can see the ductwork. This is where the lockers were on the main level and the upper levels. So we're using those chases that are in those locations. Prior to that, that was an open air system where they pressurized the lower level in the basement and actually used those chases to distribute the air. Now it'll be now it'll be obviously in ductwork, so that'll be a great thing. Again, this work, so we're getting ready to actually build these walls and drywall these as well on the 20th of the month here. And our last slide is the lower level in the boiler room, the basement level. We've completely emptied that space. We've abated all the asbestos. There's some asbestos paint on the walls, so we had to find all of our penetrations and abate that paint off the walls where we needed to. There's quite a bit of paint down there that actually has some asbestos, but so wherever we penetrate, we need to remove that material. So we've done that. Equipment's starting to arrive. The new boilers are coming in March. So that'll be exciting to get those boilers down in that space. We've also removed an area there where we had an old fuel tank in the old coal chute area. That was removed. We've installed the new masonry walls, did the infill. And then now in March, we'll be actually doing the new addition for the Lula lift for the ADA entrance on the southwest corner of the school. So we always just had the one entrance that was ADA in the front. Now we'll have one also in the back. Cool. So along with that, all the bathrooms are being updated for ADA as well. So they're roughed in and we're getting ready to do ceramic tile. So a lot of good progress. I know, I believe Mark Needham is planning a board tour here next month. So we'll get a chance to actually walk through the facility and see it. But you know, it doesn't look like much is happening on the outside of the building, but I know inside it looks a lot different right now. And that is all the pictures I have. Any questions on Wesby?
Looks very different.
Who is ICS?
Who is ICS? We're the program managers for construction managers for the project for Blueprint 181.
What's the name of the company?
ICS.
That's just, that doesn't mean.
And, well, it used to mean, it's ICS now, but back when it was.
Minneapolis or here?
I'm from Pillager, Minnesota, actually. So
It's ICS based.
ICS is based out of Minneapolis. Yeah. But we have remote offices. We have an office in Brainerd. We have an office in Park Rapids. We have an office in Sauk Rapids, Sioux Falls, and then also in Pennsylvania.
Cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Mr. Chair? Question.
Yes, sir.
I'm a newbie,
Yeah.
so I've got one kind of overall arching question.
Sure.
With a project this big, obviously there's going to be change orders, correct?
Correct.
Are there any, and I don't know any other way to ask the question except to ask it. Are there any egregious change orders? In other words, is it something to do with architectural or, I mean, obviously change orders have to be signed off on and all this other good stuff. I get all that.
Nope, there's an approval process that we have in place.
Yeah, and I don't want to go through every change order.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's quite a few.
Well, for sure. I mean, so give you an idea on the scale of the project. When we're complete, we'll have $234 million worth of construction put in place. So it's a large project, obviously. And along the way, I mean, there's been, you know, we're working with a lot of older buildings, so we do find things. I mean, Wesby was Wesby is actually not as scary as it used to be before we started construction. You know, we went through the demolition process, the discovery stage, and now we're at the point of putting it back together. But, you know, a lot of times, you know, we'll run into unforeseens, you know, for, you know, change orders, could be owner improvements, you know, along the way, there might be an opportunity where it makes sense to do something more. So there's been, I mean, obviously there's been change orders along the way, but I wouldn't say there was like anything that was like, you know, a horrible surprise that we weren't, you know, totally anticipating or expecting. You know, I mean, you have everything from soil corrections to opening up some of these old buildings and finding some of the crazy things that they did back in the day. But
Imagine.
But, you know, relatively speaking, I mean, we're in the oldest building now.
How old is that building?
I believe it was 1934. Is that right?
Really?
I think it was rebuilt in 28. 23 was the fire, or 23 was built, and it had fire, and we rebuilt in 28. So
It's almost as old as I am. I meant Randy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Damien.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to new business. Bringing up Director Murtha for the e-learning versus snow days action item.
Yep.
It's, Janet, I'm not, oh, there we are. Okay. The reason we're here before you is we were asked to bring forward information regarding the survey data of families and staff on the question of e-learning days versus snow days. And so what we've done is surveyed, collected, and collated the responses. And what we see is there's a plurality of people who wanted to preserve President's Day as the holiday, or use President's Day, I'm sorry, as the holiday, and then use it as a makeup day for snow days, and then to move on to other options. In other words, remove e-learning as an option. That's the short version of what it was. There were groups who were surveyed who did wish to preserve this. This would include cooks, this would include custodial, and other support staff. But the rest of the groups that were surveyed, including families, the preponderance was collectively no snow days. You had three questions. First question was, whether or not to remain as it currently is. Second one was whether or not to keep President's Day as a holiday. And the third question was to use President's Day as a makeup day. Between the keep President's Day and use President's Day, a clear majority in each case wanted to move away from e-learning days. So the administrative recommendation, go ahead. Is there a question?
No. I think if someone was just coughing behind you.
No. The administrative recommendation then is to, by policy, direct us to revise policy 602, which is the policy that governs the organization of the school calendar and the school day. So at that point, what we would do is remove any language around e-learning from that policy. And then once that policy is complete, then that policy would direct the actions on how to proceed with whatever practice is going to be created for making up days when the buildings cannot be occupied for instruction.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, John.
Mr. Murtha, I've got several questions, but let me start with the administrative suggestion. Because I looked at those statistics, I looked at the surveys, I looked at the information that we were all sent, and certified staff, most of the staff wanted to keep e-learning days.
No, most of the staff, the plurality of staff requested to keep e-learning days at the tune of 48.1%, but that's not a majority. The majority of staff voted for one of the two options that removed e-learning days. You are correct to assume, though, that that means that staff are split on the issue, but the preponderance was to move away.
So I'm glad you said that the staff was split on the issue because I saw that same thing. Although I also know that the recommendation for e-learning no, I don't want to. I am not in favor of e-learning days. As a board member, as a father of children, as a grandfather, I think research has shown that in order to have a child be successful in their education journey, the best thing we can do is make sure that in front of them is a qualified, certified, professional, motivated staff. Licensed staff, licensed educator, licensed, whatever, licensure, whatever kind of staff they are. So that's the best thing we can do for kids. And I really, all of us know that throughout the whole COVID thing and e-learning days, our children, for the most part, except in the state of Utah, which would be interesting to research that, most children lost academic progress, except in the state of Utah. But however, Mr. Murtha, I've seen the administrative recommendation that says, if we go back to snow days, which I think we should, and if we get to more than the 165 days that our student contact days required by the state, there's a way to make up those days. And I know that it's been suggested that there'd be non-student contact days. We get to the 165 days of student contact days as required by state statute, period, no matter how that is done. But the remaining 169 contractual days, and I'm talking about certified staff, seem to be up in question. And as a former educator, I know that non-student contact days were held in a number of ways during that process. And board members, I want you to understand that they can be professional days, they can be work days, they can be flex time days. So there's a number of ways to do this. And I would like to see I would like to see the administration come forward with the solutions from all of the unions, all of the staff, prior to taking a vote on any change of the calendar. You're going to have multiple opinions, obviously, from multiple groups. And I think it would be worth our while, board members, to have the administration get with the unions and have it negotiated and then come back to us with the summarized synopsis solution. Let me stop there and have you respond.
How many unions are there, Mr. Murtha?
11? 9.
So we're going to try to get 9 different deals to get along.
To respond to
We
what you
have
said, there are two questions here. One is a question of inherent managerial right, and that is the question to determine whether or not we have the practice of e-learning or not. That is what we're requesting a decision on tonight. The mechanics of fulfilling contractual obligations.
You'll figure that out.
Well, the director is correct. That is a bargained issue. So whether we extend the calendar to make up days or some other arrangement, that affects contracts because it affects the termination date of a work agreement. So at that point, that will have to be bargained. But the question of e-learning versus not e-learning is a question of practice, which the administration has the right to make a recommendation on, and the school board has the right to make a decision upon.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Director Ward.
I've often heard Mr. Murtha and have lived by inherent managerial rights. I understand that totally. All of us board members, at least that ran for election, re-election, or election, many of us talked about the morale of the staff and the morale of, just the general education atmosphere. And we want to have an atmosphere that is positive, that is transparent, that is workable, that is agreeable with everyone. So board members, that's my plea is that we inherent managerial right basically says, here's how we're going, here's how it can be done, and here's how we think it should be done. I would rather see everybody get to the table, and Director Donlinger, yes, I don't care how many units we have, 9, 11, 15, contracts are contracts. And the contracts have to be negotiated within the contractual rights of each union. And so I would rather have the contracts negotiated and come back to us board members with an agreement that, and I know that puts a burden on the administration. I understand that. I totally understand it. But I also want to be able to have the staff have input, all the staff, just like the survey. And I'm glad we did this survey. But again, I believe that we need to have input and decisions made before it comes back to us as a board.
Are you then asserting that based on negotiations, we would not step away from e-learning?
No, I didn't say that.
Because that would be the implication of continuing that part of a conversation. I agree with everything you said, Director Ward. And
good, let's do it then.
The question comes down to, though, is at this moment, does the school board wish to end the practice of e-learning? Okay. Obviously, both by statute and by agreement, we must bargain with each and every single one of our groups, non-negotiable, it's just the nature of the business, what the mechanics would be because it deals with the end of contract time. That's not in dispute. And I fully believe that in that process, then teacher voice or membership voice in any of the associations gets fully heard because the representatives of those associations are at the table. So no one's trying to deny participation, no one's trying to deny transparency. We're merely trying to set a course where this is what we've decided now. It has implications for work that we will do. It's process work around negotiations. We'll do that then. That's it.
Mr. Chair.
Director Heidman, please.
Mr. Ward, I think what Mr. Murtha is trying to explain is how can we negotiate with 11 unions until the board agrees to e-learning? Well, if we agree to that, there'd be no negotiations because that's already in the contract. Right. If we go to snow days, which what we're trying to do, Mr. Murtha is absolutely 100% correct. Those bargaining units will bargain what they want based upon snow days. So we're not shutting them out. All we're going to do tonight, Director Ward, is vote on whether we want snow days and then just let everything else fall in place. Is that a...
Yeah, I think so. And okay, the good news is we have time. I don't believe negotiations have begun. It's not my pig, not my barn. I'm not usually involved. So if the board needs time to reflect, no immediate decision needs to be made tonight, but it seemed clear with the information that we brought forward that there was evidence to make a decision. And it felt like it was an imperative of the board, at least I felt I was directed to, gather this information and bring it back to you.
Okay. Director Donlinger.
Mr. Chair.
John, if it's okay, I'm going to let Director Donlinger speak first, and then I'll circle back to you.
All right.
So I understand what John's saying, but what's a proven fact is that less fortunate children are falling further and further behind with e-learning. And he talks about running and morale. Well, the morale of these kids and the mental health of these kids and the parents, you know, if both parents are working, we've got 70-year-old grandparents that are trying to figure out if that kid's doing their work. You got 15, 14, 13-year-old kids that are tricking their grandparents. It's not a good situation. It's not been doing very well nationwide, statewide, and I don't think it's been really well accepted in Brainerd. And I think it's a great thing that you're doing. I think we should vote on it tonight. And I think you guys are qualified to work out the details with the bargaining units.
Okay, Director Ward.
Thank you. And maybe you guys didn't hear me loud and clear enough. I am not in support of e-learning days. I want to be clear on that. I'm going to say it again. I am not in support of e-learning days. What I am in support of, Director Heidemann, Director Donlinger, and the rest of the board members, is for the staff to be involved in the process and be brought back to us. If you board members read your packets, you saw that there was an administrative recommendation about, what to do for as far as using snow days. And my simple dialogue here is about including the staff in participating for their own units and what they want and what they will negotiate, and then coming back to us. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying I think we're prematurely making maybe just like we did with, in my opinion, with the strategic plan that we just voted on. I think we're prematurely voting on an issue that's very important. And I agree with you, Representative Director Donlinger, that children, families, and staff, everybody is impacted by this, and everybody has been impacted by this, especially our children. And that is exactly why I'm suggesting that they bring back a solution that everybody has been at the table with, because I thought this was for next year's calendar, and it is, isn't it, Mr. Murtha?
That is correct. No change voted on tonight would take effect until after July 1.
Okay. Well, I hope that
It's not our recommendation to change in the middle of the process. We've communicated to parents what expectations are. We've had staff do preparations to execute. If we change in the middle, the fleet does not turn on a dime. We're going to create confusion both in staff and in families. People know, and this is what we're doing, this is what we committed ourselves to do, and we've been transparent in that all along. So I do want us to make a clear decision in a timely enough manner that we can communicate it, tie up all the loose ends of the process through negotiations, and then communicate what our practice will be well in advance of the fall so families are prepared at that time. Just trying to look ahead to back mapping from the start of the school year.
Okay, Director Spear.
Director Ward, just to clarify, when we're talking about approving tonight, taking away e-learning days, that we're taking that off the table, is your recommendation that we leave that as part of the discussion going back to these groups so that there might be opportunity to say, yes, we want 2 e-learning days, or no, we don't want e-learning days? Because I'm thinking, this was the process we asked for to get input from all of those groups to then come back and make this decision. And if this doesn't feel like the right level of input, absolutely, I think then we need to do something different if we feel like those voices weren't heard. And so I'm open to what that process is, but trying to understand what then is part of it, if e-learning days are still part of that discussion.
And this is Angie Bennett. I guess, just to reiterate kind of what has already been said, but this policy change is directly into student days. It doesn't have to do anything to do with what staff days will be. The policy change is strictly e-learning versus snow days. So are we going to be in session when there's inclement weather, or are we not? And I think that's it doesn't have to do with the staff contract days. We don't write policy for staff contract days. We negotiate that through each union. Each union also of the 9 are going to have a very different viewpoint on what they want it to look like. So to come back with a solid recommendation, I guess, from all unions, they are not going to agree because they have very different roles in our district. The majority or not the majority, but there's really 3 to 4 units that would be impacted by e-learning versus snow days. The rest of the employees come regardless. So like this clerical unit comes, directors come, principals comes, custodians come. There's lots of different groups that are going to continue their work regardless if it's an e-learning or a snow day. For those that are impacted because they're no longer teaching, they don't have a student to be an EA with, they don't have anyone to cook for, they don't, interpreting, those groups, those are the ones that we would have to look at. What are the contractual ramifications of their duty days? And then how do we ensure that they meet those contract days? that's something that's going to be very individual based on the unit.
Angie, can you give an update of how many groups are up for negotiations?
Yep, this year, we do have the certified unit for negotiations. We have
What's the certified unit?
teachers, educational assistants, we have food service, custodial. We're currently in negotiations with confidential.
Principals,
They did 3.
directors?
Directors in their handbook. But I think that's, so like the EA food service certified, what we would have to do is look at the impact of the head cook handbook as well and see how that would relate. And then talk to those folks. Interpreters, they go through 2024. That would be another group that we would have to meet and discuss contract implications because there is language in regard to e-learning. I guess one thing that's difficult for me on the negotiating side is how do I negotiate when there's nothing to negotiate for? Right now, we're in e-learning. The policy is e-learning. I don't know how to negotiate for a snow day when we don't have snow days.
Well, and we have all the charts, and you can see who doesn't. When you go through all the different departments, like you said, there's a couple of them that are happy with the way things are, and most everybody else is the other direction. So I think we should just make the decision and tear the Band-Aid off and be done with it, don't you?
I just have one more question. So once e-learning days are decided, whether we continue or discontinue, what is the board's responsibility after when you negotiate with all these other unions?
To approve contracts.
To approve contracts, okay. And so we trust that that process will happen and then you
Yep,
bring
so
it.
we would continue to negotiate with each of the groups until we reach tentative agreement. And then that's at the point where both the union side votes to approve.
Okay.
If that's what they want to go to the board, if that passes, then it comes to you for the final approval.
Chair. Mr. Chair,
Director Heidman first, please.
Angie.
I thought I was circled back to.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did, you're on high. I'm going to go to Director Ward. Point of order.
Because that's what you told me before, but anyhow, so regardless of how many contracts are up this year, and thank you for asking that question, Superintendent Hahn, regardless of how many contracts are up this year, this affects all contracts. Even if they're not up this year, they still need to be negotiated. They still need to have some kind of a memorandum of understanding or something that they have to agree with in their contract versus e-learning versus snow days, period.
So
And
you're
that's my
negotiating
point,
regardless.
folks.
Dependent on the impact. So like
Excuse me. Excuse me. And that's my point. And Angie just said that, you've got different contracts with different needs and different opinions and different desires, and they're not going to all come back the same. That is exactly why I'm suggesting what I've suggested, that you come back to us with solutions, because of our children, period, and what's good for them, period. And so, again, I am not in favor of e-learning days. The best thing we can do is have qualified, certified, licensed staff in front of them, period. So I will vote not for e-learning days, but for snow days. But I also have to make sure, or I want to make sure, that staff is engaged in the whole process and that it's not been determined this is how it's going to be as a result of now snow days. Do you understand my question, Mr. Murtha and Superintendent Hahn?
Yes.
We understand the question.
Yeah, Director Ward, it hasn't been determined. That's why it has to be
No, I
discussed and negotiated with each group. So there has been no
Right.
determination made regarding staff, so.
Thank you.
Director Heidman.
Angie, what did we do before e-learning days was even born?
Well, e-learning has been here since I was born in the district, so I will defer.
Okay, now I learned something, but
What we
when you
used
say
to have,
165 contract days, Mr. Murtha, that means teachers
Student days.
have to,
contact days.
they have to be teaching.
Yes.
In front of their students, either via computer or in person.
Correct.
I don't
That's-
want to get too far in the weeds with negotiations.
Sure.
Who gets hurt the most by e-learning days as far as in people involved with the unions? Obviously, we don't need cooks for an e-learning day. right?
Correct,
They don't get paid, right?
correct. Well,
We have language in their contract.
Okay, okay, but I don't want to get too involved
Right.
with the contract negotiations now, because I believe they're separate issues, and that's the way I'm going to be voting, so.
To answer your original question about what did we used to do, what we used to do was we had 2 holidays built into the calendar in the second half of the year. One was President's Day, and one was the Monday after the Easter break.
Okay.
Okay, and those 2 are designated as always potential snow makeup days. So if there was a snow day, you used one of those days or both of those days. And then what you did was you added time at the end of the year. And I don't believe, because it hasn't, that's what was in place when I showed up 10 years ago, but we never executed that deep into the process. It never was more than 2 days. What you did was you didn't bring students back, but you brought staff back. Okay, unless you needed to bring them back to meet your 165 days. That was what it is. So the original, the totality of the administrative recommendation was essentially to return to some form of that. We do honor that. That portion is language that must exist in a contract and has to be bargained. Whether or not we do e-learning does not.
Thank you.
So you've
Director
got
Ward? Oh, go ahead, Director Donnelly.
You've got 4 days built in anyways, right? Because we go 169 instead of 165.
Correct.
So the odds of having to add on at the end of the year are really, we have to have quite the snowstorm. Yep. I'm with you.
It hasn't happened in the
Is it
10 years
real?
I'm here. Now, Dr. Hahn's been a part of the district for 22. I can't remember.
We had one where we had to go beyond, and I just remember
Is that the 89?
it was wild, and then we had
blizzard started
floating,
in
we had
October.
floating days and things like that. But I can tell you this December leading up,
It was 91, by the
we were
way.
very close. Because we've had 2 e-learning days, an early out and a late start, all that happened right before, well, it happened before break and then coming back. So
Yeah, it did create a nail biter.
it created a wild, which then we had lots of, that's why you're having this discussion. There were lots of strong feelings about that, especially when power was going out and lots of other issues, so. But beyond that, in my 27 years, I can remember one where it got really wild by the end of the year. And I think we did a float, I'm looking at some of our EMB, I think we did a floating, we came back for a couple days and then we did a floating in service, just to
Get it done.
get it done.
Yep.
I think that's, it might, Jesse Ventura might have been the governor then too.
Oh, boy.
I mean, we're talking a while ago. So,
Unfortunately, I was in the classroom in those days. I remember it well.
but it's, knock on wood, it doesn't, and hopefully won't happen. We're planning for something that hopefully never comes, but.
In your 22 years, Heidi, have we ever shortened spring break? I mean, that's almost impossible to do because people have
Actually-
plans.
Actually, no.
During construction, we did
Eliminated.
not do spring break. And so
Okay.
there's been different things that have had us navigate through that. So, and different contracts have different contracted dates of service as well, depending on the unit. So that's what impacts us too. But traditionally, we build them in and people can plan ahead. So when they hit in December or January, people then know in February or April or that they're coming.
So Director Ward, is what you're asking for a different kind of information or a different gathering of information? Just trying to figure out
So-
what we're looking for to move forward on this.
All I'm saying, Director Spear, is this, as I said before, because I lived in those shoes as well, and have, somebody just asked about, did we ever shorten spring break? And you got the answer to that. I've been involved in non-student contact days by a number of ways, and I stated that at the beginning of my dialogue tonight. So what I'm asking for, I'll repeat, I am not in favor of e-learning days. So if it's just a vote on get rid of e-learning days, I'll vote yes on that. And I've stated why that is so important. My biggest concern is that all staff are participating in what they see as non-student contact days. If we get the non-student contact days, the more than 165, what they think they need to have for their non-student contact days. So that, I know that's negotiations. I know, and that's, again, that is why I'm suggesting that we have the administration do that prior to bringing this to us. But if it's just a vote on e-learning versus snow days, I will vote to eliminate e-learning days. I hope that's clear. And I believe I'm hearing from everybody involved in the administration that we are going to go to the table and listen to the staff as to what their contractual desires are. I think I'm hearing that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Director
Thank
Ward. I
you.
guess I'll throw a little twig on the fire here. And what I would say is, it seems to me what we are voting on tonight is e-learning versus snow days, and that puts a framework around any of these negotiations, whether they're within the natural course of trying to jumpstart these collective bargaining, or excuse me, these bargaining agreements or bargaining units, plus the ones that aren't going to be up for renegotiation prior to the start of next school year. Am I understanding that correctly? So that allows you to do MOUs with those groups, everybody coming to the table with their wish list for how this needs to function from a mechanical perspective. What we're just saying is this, because in my mind, Director Ward, to not vote on it forces the administration to go negotiate with unclear ground rules on what our destination is. And to me, this just puts a point on the horizon to negotiate towards with all of those units, and that would be why I would be in favor of moving forward with it tonight myself.
All right, I'll make a motion that we accept the administrative recommendations.
To remove e-learning for the 23-24 school year and beyond.
Right, so as presented, approval of removing e-learning days and reinstituting snow days on the school calendar for 2023, 2024. That is what's being voted on.
And beyond.
Correct.
And I will second.
All right, we have a motion from Director Donnellinger with a second by Director Brecken to approve the removing of e-learning days and reinstating snow days. Further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
John Moore,
Yes.
Kevin Boyle,
Yes.
Michelle Brecken,
Yes.
DJ Donnelly,
Yes.
Randy Heidemann,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you.
Dr. Hahn, you're up with strategic plan approval of the dates, the timeline.
So what's before you is the approval of the first 4 upcoming dates. So if you see March 2nd, we have student and community listening sessions. Our student sessions, we're actually going to have one housed at Forest View and one at the high school, where they'll be taking input from student groups that'll be designated there. And then on the evening of March 2nd, we will have a 4 to 5 session and a 6 to 7 o'clock session. All of those will be held at the Brainerd High School large conference room. We then want to move forward with March 3rd, which are staff and community listening sessions. Again, the evening ones will be 4 to 5 and 6 to 7. They're going to designate a special business group and community leader group that will be happening over the lunch hour on March 3rd. The other dates are March 7th, again, looking at a lunch hour, and then a 4 to 5 and a 6 to 7, and those will be open invitations. The other thing that's going to happen is between March 7th and March 14th is when they're going to put out the survey to community members. And then staff are actually going to get surveys that start March 4th. So staff will get their community surveys, or their surveys a little bit ahead of time. And then on March 8th, they're going to ask for individuals that are willing to be part of the community stakeholder group. So the community stakeholders are going to be that group of 50 to 60 individuals that really start to dive into all the data and start developing the plan. So they're going to look for a sign up for that. What we're really trying to get through is get those March and April dates approved so we can get those out and start advertising them. And we actually have a site on our website that's going to create that page so we can have all that information coming out and links to everything. So everything's scheduled, but those are the dates we need approval on: the 2nd, the 3rd, the 7th, and then the 11th to begin all of the stakeholder input and listening sessions.
So am I correct in assuming that
So
moves
moved.
us from tentative
This moves us from the draft presentation of those first dates to solidify
to scheduled?
to scheduled dates.
And my understanding is those community listening sessions are open to anyone.
To anyone.
Great.
To anyone.
And those are going to, the community listening sessions are also slated for the large conference room at the high school?
We've scheduled everything outside of the student sessions. We're going to go to the students. The consultants will. But otherwise, community listening sessions are all going to be at the large conference room at Brainerd High School. We picked that as a central location. One of the thoughts was if you couldn't hit every site, to do one central site.
What's the capacity of that room?
I looked where did, Miss Rusk is at an orchestra contract. And if we need to move the larger space, we can.
Okay, I just have a contingency for that.
We have a contingency plan. The other thing they'll do, virtual links as well, so people can be in person or people can also
Yeah.
join and listen virtually. So kind of be a hybrid of both.
And if I'm remembering correctly, they've got a way to help us communicate this out to the communities.
Correct. So that's what, once we know the dates and we can get approval from the board, then you're going to start to see, like I said, that web page is being built. We'll start to do messages out. There'll be flyers out. There'll be social media postings. All the ways we communicate, we'll put all those dates out. They'll be published as public meetings, so they'll be published in the newspaper as well.
Times and every location, everything.
Correct.
Thank you.
So that's what you're approving, are the first 4 dates. And like I said, then in between there, there's some staff surveys and some community surveys that will go out.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the motion.
Thank you, Director Ward.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Ward and a second by Director Heidman. Roll call vote, please.
John Ward,
Yes.
Herman Boyles,
Yes.
Michelle Brecken,
Yes.
TJ Dunlinger,
Yes.
Randy Heidemann,
Yes.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
all in favor.
Next up, we have Marcy with the general obligation school building bond report and action item.
We actually have Matthew Hammer with Ellers here present tonight, so thank you for joining us. Last time you guys got to see him live on the screen, but he is here to go through our bid result, or our sale results from today, which is pretty exciting.
Right. Yeah, so thank you, Marcy. Good evening, board members. My name's Matthew Hammer from Ellers. We're the district's financial advisor, and we're here to talk about the final issuance of the district's Blueprint 181 financing. So our role really is to help the district with levy planning, long-term financial planning, but also facilitate the bond sale process, which we did this morning and over the last month. So as an update to where we were, we presented the pre-sale report, like Marcy said, at the beginning of January, at the January 9th meeting. And at that time, we were estimating a 4.1% interest rate for the multi-purpose issue. We're selling 3 purposes, so three components. The first component being the remaining authority from the district's voter-approved bonds from their 2018 election. So that's about $2.6 million. And then there's 2 components that are being funded through the district's existing revenues. So about 3.4 million of the LTFM bonds, and then about another 3.8 million. I might have that reversed, but through the capital facilities bonds, which are being funded through existing revenue. So there's no tax implications for those. And in fact, those components will actually provide relief for any ag property owners in the district. So with the results we received, we ended up with 8 bids this morning. The low bidder was Baird out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They provided a low bid of 3.36%, so far better than what we were anticipating during pre-sale. The cover bid was 3.39% from Northland Securities. And I think the high bid was TD at a little bit over 3.6. So we'd like to see at least 3 bids as part of the process, and we ended up seeing 8 in total. So I think we had 5 initially signed up when I talked to Marcy this morning, and we ended up getting 3 more as part of that process through that competitive sale process at 10. Overall, we're looking at about a $200,000 savings in principal and interest over the life of the issue, but we also received a premium bid as part of the bids this morning, and that's going to provide about $370,000 of additional resources for the projects. And most of that's going to land in the district's LTFM component. But overall, we're super pleased with the results. It's going to be a total issuance of just under 10 million, so 9,925,000 in total principal. And we have updated results throughout or updated schedules throughout the packet. There's one chart in there that kind of shows where we're at from a tax perspective. Our tax rate on the portion, the school building portion that's affecting taxes, you'll see the tax rate's actually lower than 22, which we were anticipating. We had built that initial debt service levy into the district's pay 23 with an estimate. So we were within $2,000, I think, of that estimate. And then the final payment will be in the district's next levy cycle for pay 24. So it's only 2 years and we're paying. So that's going to be a quick payoff period for voters for the district taxpayers on that component. The district did also receive, you'll see a rating report as part of that sale day report. S&P assigned an underlying or a stable underlying outlook for the district's existing underlying rating, so they held it stable and affirmed that rating at single A. You do receive the credit enhanced rating in Minnesota, which is an outstanding benefit for districts that are issuing municipal securities as well, and that's the AAA from S&P that in essence is there to back up the district if they were not able to make their debt service payment, and that's never been utilized by any school, but when bidders are making their bids, it's a good assurance to them that their payments will be made. So and I think as part of that, Dr. Hahn and Marcy did an outstanding job, again, representing the school from through a rating call process that we go through. It lasts about an hour, where they really dive into what's going on the ground, and they were able to get everything they needed as they went into their committee to affirm the district's rating, which I think is an important piece to the process when underwriters are looking at making their bids. So with that, that gives you an overview. I can answer any questions folks have. There's a resolution that was prepared by Peter Martin that will require a roll call vote tonight.
And the only thing I want to add is that rating, you know, if we ever wanted to see that change, that we'd like to see the fund balance be more consistent, like consistently going up or just being consistently the same. So I would love if we got a rating change. I know that's high hopes, but that's on that would be a good thing if we saw that go up.
Yeah, and you'll notice that in their upside and downside scenarios, they were really referencing the district's reserves as part of that process. And
Right, so you're talking about the unrestricted fund balance? Yeah. So that's what dropped it to the single A?
So we've been the same for, I think.
The whole time.
Yeah,
I mean, what kept it, or what I should say is allowed it to be categorized that way. Yes. But to the bidders, it essentially looks like a AAA because of the state backing. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so you get it a credit enhanced rating. That's just, in essence, it's like an additional insurance policy.
So if I'm an underwriter, that's what I'm looking at, right?
Yeah.
From a risk management perspective.
Right, exactly.
And then if I understood correctly, the lowest bidder that came in was 21 basis points ahead of what you were expecting.
Right. Yep. 3.61, I think, was the low or with the high bid.
Yep.
And we were estimating 4.1 pre-sale. So rates have been coming down over the last 6 weeks. So we hit the market at a good time, and typically this time of year is a good time to be in the market. In January and February, as most municipal debt has callable maturities as a 2-1. So there gets to be a supply and demand, and we're seeing a lot of supply and demand in the market right now.
Great, thank you.
What's the term on these deals, man?
So there's different,
I saw, I was reading
different
through it,
components.
and I
The
saw that
longest component of it's 18 years. So the component that's going to impact taxes is only 2 years. The component that's the capital facilities bond component, which is going to be funded out of the district's operating capital, that's 10 years. And then the LTFM component is 18 years in total. And
At least it's not confusing.
What'd you say?
At least it's not confusing. It's easy to understand.
Yeah.
But thank you for laying that out, and I see that on page 13.
Right.
That's great. Thanks for delivering the good news in person, too.
Yeah, we were hoping for really good results, and we received really good results this morning, which we're really ecstatic with what we ended up getting for bids this morning.
So you had indicated we're gonna be saving some money, correct?
That's the hope, right?
Okay.
So, and these do have call dates on them, so there'll be an opportunity to refinance in the future. You'll see that some of the coupons were 5%, so there is an opportunity. It's an 8-year call, so after that 8-year call, we, as the district's financial advisor, are reviewing that at least twice a year to make sure that if there is any savings opportunities, regardless if it's within the district's operating budget or for taxpayers, that we're making sure we're taking advantage of that.
This must be a question for Marcy, but where does that money go that we save? Does it go back into a fund of ours, or?
So it's not going to be on the levy then.
Okay.
on the levy side. But if it's in LTFM or capital, then it doesn't come out of those buckets. Like, we just have that much savings in LTFM or capital.
Thank you.
All right, we have a resolution.
I'll make,
Go ahead.
do we already have a motion?
Nope.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution awarding the 2023A General Obligation School Buildings, Facilities, Maintenance, and Capital Facilities bonds as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Director Spear with a second by Director Heidman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Kevin Boyle,
Yes.
Michelle Brecken,
Yes.
BJ Donler,
Yes.
Randy Heidemann,
Yes.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
John Ward,
Congratulations and tell Tim Crow, nice job. Yes.
all in favor.
I will make sure to do that. So thank you guys for the opportunity for working with on this. And again, we're ecstatic with the results we received. Yes.
All right, next action item would be the approval of the Baxter SRO contract for the 2022-2023 school year as presented.
So before you is the Baxter SRO agreement. It's really the only changes in there were the contract dates, which you'll see it's just a 1 year. Normally we do a 2-year agreement. However, we were waiting, and normally this is done before we're in the middle of the contract, right? We were waiting on, the City of Baxter was waiting on results of a wage study, which is why the lateness of it. And then it's prorated this year because they've just had some staffing issues over there, so that we haven't had an SRO over every single day. So this is 100 days. It's 1 year so that we can review if this is the most effective use of our safe school funds. So this comes out of our safe school funds. It's restricted. It's very limited on what we can spend it on. So we're just going to review that, and potentially you would see another agreement from this, or what the new plan would be. Did I miss anything?
Nope. And I think our biggest thing was just consistency. So working with the City of Baxter as they look at the officers in place. And then we just have really looked at further discussion of our use of SROs within the buildings. So being able to meet with administration and see what current needs are.
And for the benefit of the new board members, we late last year signed approved a new contract with the city of Brainerd. Before that, we had sort of a contract with them, but it was like written on a napkin. And we used the Baxter one as kind of a model. So all this is just bringing this one up to speed, and because we were operating essentially without a contract. Is that correct?
And that one expires at the end of this year. So
Correct.
both of these will expire at the end of this year.
We'll get a full reset, and then there's discussion about reviewing how best to use those dollars that we're allocating today to school resource officers, potentially in the same way or in different ways for subsequent school years.
How many SRO officers do we contract with?
So there's one at the high school and one at Forest View.
Okay. And one's Baxter and one's Brainerd.
Correct.
Yeah, that's why I have to have contracts with each city.
Got it.
So, like Mark said, we've been waiting all year. So now that their wage study's done. And then I'm looking at Principal Anderson. I know our consistent liaison officer had been injured. And so we've had different officers this year. So I know Chief Exted was looking to have a consistent SRO in place.
I can vouch for what happens at Forest View. I've lived there for the last 3 weeks, and I'll tell you, Adam, who is being replaced, the relationships that these people develop with these students, quite amazing. And I would assume the new SRO will develop those same relationships with kids. So this is money well spent, not only for protection, but also relationships. And, you know, I walked up to Adam a lot of times, and there was that respect for the police officer as well. So it was really cool to see. I can vouch for that.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Director Ward.
And Director Heidemann, thank you for those comments. Also, from my experience, those officers, as Director Heidemann suggested, not only there for protection, but building relationships. And once they build those relationships with the SRO, there have been children that have shared very, very personal information that that help them in their lives. And so I think that, as Director Heidemann said, this is money well spent as we all talk about and think about our mental health crisis with our children in school.
I'll make a motion to approve the
I'll second
Baxter SRO contract.
We have a motion by Director Spear, second by Director Dongler to approve the Baxter SRO contract for the 2022-2023 school year as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
We're roll call again. I was doing so good for a minute.
Roll call.
Michelle Braca,
Yes.
TJ Donnelly,
Yes.
Randy Heidemann,
Absolutely, yes.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
John Ward,
Yes.
Kevin Boils,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. And next up is the approval of the revision for MSBA Policy 423, Student Relationships, as presented by Angie Bennett.
Hello. So the first one up, employee-student relationships, there's really no verbiage that has changed or recommended. This is an annual review, or I think it's every 2 years, actually. There were some statutory number changes and verbiage on those statutes, but really that was the only change, so I did just recommend it for one reading. Unless there's questions, I can go back and do some more digging.
I make a motion, we approve the revision of MSBA policy number 423, student relationships as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Brecken with a second by Director Dongler to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
TJ Donnelly,
Yes.
Randy Heidemann,
Yes.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
John Ward,
Yes.
Kevin Boils,
Yes.
Michelle Braca,
Yes.
all in favor.
Called perfect. Good job.
Oh, and I think you're still in the hot seat.
I am still in the
All
hot
right,
seat.
next up,
So-
approval of first reading for more policy cleanup here with revised MSBA policies as presented, 418 drug-free workplace, 413 harassment and violence, and 413.1 harassment and violence report form.
Yes, so these had more, I don't want to say substantial, but more edits to it. If we start with 413 harassment and violence, a lot of the changes is you'll see the term protected class rather than listing everything. As you guys likely know, that what's classified under that changes. And so I think this is the MSBA model change, just to always go back to whatever that statutory reference is for protected classes. I did note also, there is a difference from the MSBA model policy in which we reference the difference between Title IX, which I think we talked about last month, because the definitions for sexual harassment and assault are different based on Title IX standards and what is in this Minnesota Human Rights definition. So we did put some language in here in regard to Title IX, how that's different, and I would recommend keeping that just for clarification purposes as people are looking at the different policies. Any questions about the harassment and violence one? And there is an attached form with that where people can submit that in writing. Also, they can always call me and we'll work through any concerns that way.
We can approve all of these with one motion, correct?
Yep. Any questions in regard to the harassment and violence before I move on to drug-free workplace, drug-free school? Okay. So policy 418, there was some expansion in the language in the MSBA policy, which I think, as you guys also know, there's a lot of the cannabis, the edible cannabis and cannabinoids kind of going around and kind of coming into our communities. And so this policy does recommend adding those into the prohibited substances under this policy. There was some definition changes, more just clarification, such as alcohol, what that means, containing more than 1/2 of 1%, rather than giving examples. Definitions of other such things, kind of an expansion on the toxic substances. So really just expanding language just to make sure we're keeping up with the times. And then there is a recommendation just to remove the drug-free workplace, drug-free school form, as we have embedded this into our hiring process, that there are several policies that everyone has to sign off on as they come into the workforce. And then annually, we have these policies references in our employee handbooks. So I think it's just kind of a duplication. Any questions on that?
Just a thought, Angie, and tell me what you think. I mean, these little gummies and all these little things, it's going to be hard to really monitor. Has there been any discussion at the administration level? I mean, it's going to be almost impossible to.
Well, there are some policies that do reference and when we can do searches, like if there's a reasonable suspicion of some illegal activity or something under this policy, we do have procedures for that. I mean, a gummy vitamin looks very similar to and so it is difficult, and I wouldn't want to, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I wouldn't want to search all of our students, for anything like that at this point. But we do work with students and families on a case-by-case basis as things come up, and that's why we always like to keep these policies up to date, so we kind of know what direction we're looking for, so it's really clear to family and students and staff what is allowed and what's not.
So what would happen if a student or a staff member was prescribed medical marijuana?
Was prescribed.
Yeah,
There is some exceptions in here depending on
Okay.
prescription. I
Okay.
mean, kind of where the line is too is it alter your ability to do work? I mean, that's something
Sure.
we'd have to consider. That would also potentially fall under ADA, where there's a workplace accommodation.
Okay.
So there is some language in the policy of what you would do if you had a prescription for that, what we could still accept and what we still wouldn't potentially accept. But there's always conversations about that.
That's kind of a case-by-case basis, I'm sure.
Any other questions?
Make a motion. It's just the first reading, we don't have to do anything, do we?
Correct.
Oh, I'm getting pretty good at this
You
now.
can give me a heads up if you want me to change something.
All right,
I read 'em,
we
I
have a
didn't
motion,
see
do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion by Director Dondelinger and a second by Director Spear for the approval of the first reading of the 3 policies listed above. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote.
Randy Heidemann,
Yes.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
John Moore,
Yes.
Kevin Boyles,
Yes.
Michelle Brecken,
Yes.
DJ Donnelly,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you.
All right, our final action item for the evening is the approval of the deletion of the MSB policies as presented. Policy 619, which was replaced with 425. Policy 418.6, which is the drug-free workplace and school reporting form, which is no longer needed based on what we just saw. And then the 711A, digital video surveillance on school buses, was replaced by 711 and 712, which we just approved last meeting, I think, right?
I'll make a motion to approve the deletion of the 3 policies as presented.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion by Director Spear, seconded by Director Brecken, to approve the deletion of the MSBA policies as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none.
I have a couple questions.
Oh, sure.
So, Mr. Murtha, is this the same thing we were talking about a month ago? That's the mentoring?
This is the retreat.
So this is what you're replacing?
Yeah.
Okay, so I asked all my questions then. Here's one question I have, is why does the EMB get to pick the teachers that are on the committees? why wouldn't the principal of that certain site or a committee of whatever, is that part of the bargaining deal, or why is the union picking?
Practice in Brainerd. There are two parts to that. The first is it's a historic practice in Brainerd. It is something that Brainerd teachers and EMB has enjoyed that privilege since prior to any of us being. Second of all, the statute is crystal clear that the committee must be made up by a majority of teachers.
Yep, I saw that.
The EMB or the MASBA policy usually designates the authority to appoint to the school board, which usually is then interpreted as the school board's designee, which usually becomes the principal. In most places that I've been that use APPS, which is the Alternative Teacher Pay for Performance System, what we call ACOP here, there are plans where it's a vote of teachers at the site to choose their representatives. So there are multiple ways to do that. Brainerd has just historically given that authority to DMP.
Was anyone ask the teachers if they like that program, or we ever, I mean, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it, I'm just new, but if the union, personally, if I'm at this school, and we have our 2 union representatives, and they pick their friends to be on it all the time, and I'd like to get in there and make a difference, how does that work? And we don't have to sit here and waste time at this meeting about it, but if you have a short answer.
I understand the concern. The practical reality is usually the principal and EMB are cooperating to recruit people for the position.
It's like being on the Ducks Unlimited committee, they gotta talk you into it.
That's what happens with a lot of work that happens outside the workday, is people have to be tucked into it, so.
Any further discussion?
Yes.
Sure.
Question, Mr. Murtha, this goes back to the January meeting when you were talking about staff development. I believe Director Donlinger had asked for some information regarding, you've got 3 buckets in your budget. Could you send that out to us? I know you're a busy man and we all forget things, so I'm just, it's kind of a reminder if you could send that out to us, because I know you guys had a pretty good discussion at that first January meeting, so.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion or questions?
No.
Hearing none, we'll move to the roll call vote, please.
Sarah Steele?
Yes.
Ron Moore?
Yes.
Kevin Boyle?
Yes.
Michelle Brecken?
Yes.
TJ Dunlinger?
Yes.
Andy Heidemann?
Yes.
All in favor?
All right, moving on to informational. We'll start with Director Spear and her update from the Brainerd Public Schools Foundation. It's a big one.
It is, yes. We actually just met this afternoon, and we're celebrating, not all numbers are final yet, but celebrating about $75,000 preliminarily on what was brought in through the big event. So just a huge thank you. Lots of folks in this room and teachers and community support. It was awesome to see so many people there celebrating and supporting our schools. So that fantastic event. And then also wanted to pass along 2 dates. March 20th, 4A grants are due, and this is different than other years because usually they do one grant cycle. This year they're doing 2 for educators, so please pass that along and share. And if you have a senior in your life, scholarship applications are due February 28th for all the plethora of scholarships that are available through the one application. So lots to celebrate and lots coming up. Big agenda.
Great. All right, next up, Marcy Lord with the Business Services Report.
So in your board packet is the enrollment report. Just wanted to note that the revised budget has been updated with what was presented at the end of January. There's no longer the preliminary budget on there. And our ADMs is revised to 5,995. We are down 61 from the beginning of the year. When I look at the 4-year average, we average being down around 72 at this time. So we're a little under that, and hopefully we'll keep tracking so that we meet that budget goal.
Where do these kids go? Do you survey them? Do you find out where they're going? I mean, we're down like 21 8th graders. I mean, I understand the seniors, maybe they're just like I've had enough, I'm out of here, don't graduate, but like 8th graders, where do 8th graders go?
The majority of our students are leaving for online. So if you look at the high schools developed an online program and continues to develop, I think, where's Christina? We just looked at numbers. I think we have 320 enrolled in spring classes online at BHS, so they're being taught by a licensed teacher with the licensed content, not a computer-generated program. But in the middle school, we lose a lot of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to online education. And then if you look at our data, which we can give you all the data because we track every student that comes in and that comes out, we operate very much like a suburban district. A lot of people are moving, and we've seen an increase in our families in the area who have seen an increase in home prices or rent. And so they're no longer able to afford rent in our area, so they're moving out of our area to some smaller surrounding towns for cheaper rent as well. So, but we can give you a whole data request because we track every in and out.
So who does that?
Our enrollment center, and then Sue Anderson, who's our MARS coordinator. So we can get you that data. We specifically looked at middle school, and it's online.
Will you just give it to all of us?
Yes, absolutely.
Do we get paid for them being online?
No, because they're either picking an online virtual academy. Some go over to Cross Lake Charter for an online program, which they're doing like Odysseyware. So, but that is our biggest exodus to online education.
Well, what about the BHS ones?
Yeah.
Oh, BHS, yes, we do.
Yeah,
They're actually, and what's nice is it's kind of a hybrid. So some of them are taking courses. It's only a certain hour they're taking that online class. Christina Lundgren, our instructional technology director, and Mr. Murtha and Andrea Rusk, they've been working to try to build that comprehensive model. So we're hoping by 24, 25, we have a full comprehensive online opportunity for students. The next step in that comprehensive piece is developing. When you say comprehensive, you also have to offer special education services online. But I think the Brainerd High School is doing a nice job because it's live instruction, there's connection with teachers, it's actual content by an actual licensed instructor in that content area, compared to going on to just computer-created curriculum.
So are the high school online people included in these numbers then?
Yes.
Okay. You think there's like 340?
300
So I think 320 are registered in spring classes right now.
Yeah.
And some of that's impacted by kids transitioning in and out of post-secondary enrollment too, I imagine,
Correct.
semester
So some of
breaks.
them are going over to, so our online is separate from CLC, PSEO online courses. So, and when we created online, it was to maintain, we had a lot of students who were taking an online course at CLC or someplace else to have an open hour. But you've seen a lot of online public education schools come forth. So there's pros and cons.
That data that she shared with us this morning would be a good presentation.
We've asked her to present to you, so you can see that.
Who's she?
Christina Lundgren is our Director of Instructional Technology.
Well, hot dog, sign her up. Get it going.
It's going. It's been going for 3 years. COVID interrupted a few things, but.
And then also in your report is the financial report. You know, nothing really to note. I know food service and community service, you guys are going to hear me say this over and over. It's higher than prior year because we're getting back to those pre-pandemic levels. Otherwise, there's nothing really to note. Next month, we'll include the revised budget. It won't have the original budget in 22, 23.
So a couple quick questions.
Yeah.
I guess, maybe they're questions. At least I'm going to say something. The first one is, have you guys begun doing any, or can you do any kind of impact study to figure out, because the Minnesota House approved the Meals for All thing, right? So that's pretty much a done deal, most likely. Do we have a sense of what that's going to do from an impact perspective? Have you guys begun to look at that, or I mean, is that an easy number to get? Is that a hard number to get?
I was going to say, I'm sure Alyssa has already started
She's looked at
making
that
plans. Yeah, our food service director is already trying to figure that out.
So again, for everybody listening, I mean, it sounds really good on the news, but it's not going to be good for this district when that passes. It's going to cost us some money, or some funding, I should say.
He hasn't signed it yet, has it?
No, it only passed the one house so far. It's not.
That's what I thought.
But we're looking at all, because meals, there's state and federal funding that comes in. So when you look at a state doing something, then we have to look at the dollars that come in through state and federal. So Alyssa's running lots of scenarios, and then tied to that is our free and reduced, which affects our compensatory aid. And that's the big question that Director Hyben brought up at the last board meeting. Why are people for or against? Basically, if you're moving funding streams, you know, there's pros, right? Every student deserves access to meals. We saw a great benefit to that during the pandemic. But if you take away another funding stream, creates a wash. It doesn't do anything for the district. It just makes us basically move one pot to another pot. So that's the questions that are kind of, have a lot of districts waiting to see how that all plays out. But Alyssa's planning both scenarios. And she's in the middle of an audit all week, which is why she's still over at the office and not here. So.
And then another question would be, how long is this going to last?
Yeah.
What happens after 2 years? Are they going to dump it on the local school districts? I mean, good gracious.
So that's a
Gravy.
huge, yeah. I sat through a legislative session last Friday where we had a variety of superintendents from around the state presenting, and they've asked a lot of those questions. So this is great for 2, but then what happens, and if you pull another funding stream? And that's the hard part about public education, is we basically operate for a year before we have lots of answers. And so lots to figure out. So.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Director Ward.
So I know that you said it had passed in the House, but it has a long way to go before it's signed. So I just want to remind you, all of us, of that. And there will be amendments along the way. And the other thing I think that is critical is, that there probably be some amendments regarding maybe household income and things as such or whatever, because we do know this. We do know that when kids are fed, and not all kids are fed, by the way, like maybe they should be. When kids are fed, that they perform in school much better. So it's kind of a catch-22 period. But the other thing I wanted to say is it behooves all of us to let our legislators know that we have concerns about the longevity of it, as Director Heidemann said, the cost of it, as other directors said, and maybe we have opinions about who should be eligible and who should not be eligible. So I would encourage all of the board members and all the community to communicate with their legislators to let them know how you feel about this issue.
Well said.
Yep. That's all I have. If there's no other. Was that it?
I have a question for Reed that I forgot to ask on the last deal. Can I do that? Is Reed here?
It's right in front of you.
Oh, he's right there. Gosh. Who's keeping that video on those school buses? Where's that video on the school buses?
Okay, school buses, the school bus video is managed by our school bus contractor.
Okay.
So they manage their own system currently on their buses.
Well, I was reading the deal that we keep the hard drives, and I was like, well, are they dumping them every day to you? Or it says in that policy that the school takes care of the hard drives.
I mean, ultimately, as our subcontractor, we're responsible for the video that's on those buses.
I just think, just make sure that they've got some insurance or something, because those videos can be a little bit of an issue.
Yep, and that's what we do.
Get away.
And that's why that policy also talks about having a retention timeline and guidelines that we have to follow and set up. So the first step is to get the policy in place, and then we'll set up those guidelines behind that policy.
I just hate to see somebody get their hands on that crap. And
correct. Yep, and that's why we wrote the policies the way we did off of the MSBA language, because it does talk about student data privacy of that film, so which we didn't have guidelines on before.
Good. All right, so I have.
All right, thanks, Marcy. And now we are to the superintendent's report. Dr. Hahn.
Thank you. Exciting news in the room. So tomorrow we have a certain principal that has a birthday. So she's turning 25, Valentine's baby. She's very excited about it. Might have to ask her what the real birthday is, but we'll say it's 25. But there's a couple dates too that we want to make sure that we add that are missing from here. So if you go down to March 3rd, so speaking of the principal of Brainerd Learning Center, who happens to have a birthday on Valentine's Day, big one, they're ribbon cutting. So when you think about our building dedication and all the renovations, so the Brainerd Learning Center ribbon cutting is going to be happening on March 3rd. Also on March 3rd, March 2nd. Thank you. Thank you. See, look at me getting the wrong date. So we'll make sure we get those updated. And then we also have our Legendary Women. That's on that same evening. So that'll be held at the Gitche Zibe, and we've had that 5 inductees coming in. It's a pretty amazing class. So those invitations are out, so we're going to get that updated. The other thing, when we talked about, Director Spear mentioned senior scholarship deadline just from our foundation. There'll be over $150,000 worth of scholarships awarded to our graduating seniors again, thanks to the work that's done by our foundation, our community that invests. So that's a pretty significant event. So when we look at the students, that's a lot of money that can go to our graduating seniors to pursue a variety of interest in career training and college. Beyond that, that's all I have. We'll be excited to get strategic plan dates published and get that rolling as well.
Thank you. We've got a very busy calendar in the next 6 weeks with all the partner ed stuff. And as you can see on the agenda, we've got Equity Task Force meeting tomorrow. School Bus Driver Appreciation Day coming up on February 22nd. March 1st, we have the MSBA Board Chair Chat. Then we have March 2nd, so we have partner ed listening sessions and BLC ribbon cutting and legendary women of Brainerd schools.
It's a busy day.
All on that day. March 3rd, partner ed listening sessions again. Then we have the Paul Bunyan Co-op Executive Meeting and the Brainerd Public Schools Foundation meeting. Then we have Project Oversight on March 7th and more partner ed listening sessions. MSBA Day at the Capitol on March 8th. Spring break, March 13th to 17th. And finally, March 20th, regular school board meeting right here on this same bat time, same bat channel in this room with Director Spear running the show. I will not be in attendance for that meeting. I'll be gleefully watching online from elsewhere.
And one thing I was negligent of, February is Minnesota School Board Appreciation Month.
Oh, boy.
So if you want to join me in thanking our school board for stepping up. The perks, the benefits, the light reading that occurs on a regular
There's a check.
basis. But they do have a certificate of appreciation. It is a very thankless job, which has lots of hours and emails and phone calls that go well beyond just having a public meeting.
Luckily, the pay is massive.
It's huge, huge. But we're very, very grateful that you've stepped up to serve our students, staff, and community. So thank you for your service. And forgive me I should have started off with that.
Well, I can't think of a better topic to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting upon.
Yeah, motion.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn from Director Donnellinger with a second by Director Heidman. Any discussion? Just for the sake of being a good boy, roll call vote, please.
John Ward.
Yes.
Kevin Boyle.
Yes.
Michelle Brecken.
Yes.
DJ Donnelly.
Yes.
Randy Heitman.
Yes.
Sarah Spear.
Yes.
All in favor.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to get you that exit date.